Hey everyone, if you've been keeping up with some of the news on the channel lately, either through my posts or other videos that I've been making, you'll know that I played in a Star Wars Legion tournament last weekend, and it was using the old format rules mainly because I don't think there was enough time for everyone to get a grasp on the new rule changes, which I think is pretty fair. I've only gone in one demo game so far, and I'll be talking about the new rule system and my game as well in a separate video. But this is going to be the final tournament, at least at this store that I play at, for their 800-point Legion events. I picked an interesting time, you could say, to start getting involved in competitive Star Wars Legion again, because I actually played in my first big tournament for this game only a couple months ago, and I went back to the same store to play in this one, so if some of the terrain looks a little bit similar, that is the reason why. Speaking of which, if the list I'm taking in this tournament looks rather similar to my prior tournament video, that's because it is. I tweaked a couple of small things around. I got rid of the officers that I had attached to my two Rebel veteran units. I found suppression wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was going to be in that tournament, so I figured this time around it probably won't be, again, as big a deal. So I also have a card, Pip 2, that makes it so my vehicles give the Inspire 2 keyword, and I was thinking, this is probably enough. I've got pretty decent courage on a lot of units in this list as well. So we swapped out the two officers. One got replaced with a medical droid. I figured that'll help keep my characters alive. And instead of buying another kind of unit upgrade for that officer that I dropped, I instead gave my characters some upgrades. I gave Boba Fett a flamethrower. I gave him tenacity. I figured that'll help him when he's in a melee situation, getting a bigger dice pool. And then I gave Chrysanthemum Protector, so his Guardian keyword could also be used to block critical hits. Actually happened to me a lot in the last game. There were a lot of attacks where it was just criticals going through, and I was wishing I could use Guardian on it, so good to have that. Also, I don't want to spend too much time chit-chatting about hobby stuff, but I had a little bit of time the night before the tournament to get some detail work done on the miniatures here. As I kind of mentioned in the prior tournament video, this was a bit of a last-minute idea, kind of whipped together project, and it had a theme that obviously applied to the list, and it all ended up kind of working, which is a big reason why I wanted to stick with it in this second tournament that they were playing in. So I figured, why not give them a little bit more time with the paintbrush? I actually put some, what are they? Orc Boy, a box of Orc Boys from Warhammer 40k. They come with decal sheets, and a couple of them are actually really cool symbols that aren't too orcish, and you'll see in the pictures here, I decided, why not? I'll put them on my bus here. The racing stripes and stuff I feel like are pretty universal. Why not? I did a couple of freehand Rebel symbols and a couple of freehand Mandalorian symbols on some of the vehicles and the Gonk droids. The Gamorrean guards got their skin a little bit brightened up. I noticed that they actually were a bit more of a brighter green than darker green. But I also kind of figured it's cool to have a tonal range like that. And I really like the way these guys have been performing. So I'm going to paint my next squad like that. Some of the Tusken Raider robes got brightened up a little bit. I noticed there's just a bit more of a beige, whitish fabric than kind of the darker, dirtier tones that I had. I also had a lot of yellows and oranges kind of mixed in and muddled up into it, so I cleaned them up a little bit more. The last thing is I had a lot of silvers that were either inked a few times or I just never went back to, and you could tell that they were just all dark tone and they didn't have proper highlight points. So I had to go back in, kind of mix some brighter silvers and make sure they all have a nice little highlight showing on. A lot of other little detail work and cleanup stuff kind of getting done too, but I won't spend forever talking about this stuff, so we'll move on to the tournament itself. The first list I went up against actually had a really cool theme. He basically took the Imperial remnants, a Moff Gideon army. So he obviously had Moff Gideon, he had some Dark Troopers, he had that Grav Occupier tank that the Empire runs. I actually went up against that a few times. And he had a mixture of Shore Troopers and Inferno Squad, I believe, and that's pretty much everything. Now, unfortunately, I haven't actually played any games against the Dark Troopers, and I have not played any games against Moff Gideon. So there were some first time things kind of happening here, especially when it came to the command cards. I believe we used my command deck for this game. We had capture the supplies as our primary objective, clear conditions for the environment, and something kind of interesting, we got danger close for not just this one, but I will actually have danger close for the deployment method for every single battle I play in for this tournament. This was our field of battle. I'd say we have a bit of a Geonosian theme for this planet. And I like playing on this board. I think I fought my first game actually in the last tournament on this battlefield. And also, my minis don't look too bad with the desert theme to this area. I deployed all my infantry, including the Mach 2 turrets, facing towards the center kind of supplies and kind of conflict zone that I'm sure is going to erupt. I put my bus on the far edge of the battlefield with both of my heroes behind it. I think that was actually a bit of a mistake. And you can see I kind of put the swoop bikes over on the side to support the infantry advance. The Gamorrean guards are inside of the bus, kind of getting ready to deploy out and chop down whatever they can get into contact with as quick as possible. Across the battlefield through that archway, you can see my opponent's occupier tank, and it's got fully loaded Dark Trooper squad in the back, so it's got like 2 specialist weapons, I believe. He has Moff Gideon kind of forwardly observing and supporting those troops, and you can just barely see Inferno Squad use their infiltrate ability to get a forward position on that center objective, just barely peeking out there. It's kind of out of the photo here, but he's got his mortars positioned to the right side of that tank, and his shore troopers are behind it. The first turn begins, and after I hand out all of my little independent tokens and pre-game shenanigans, I move. I think I drew my operatives first, which kind of sucks, because obviously I wanted them to move up with the cover of the bus, but it's kind of whatever. They both have the ability to move over terrain relatively easily, and I get them in position nearby to threaten Inferno Squad. As I'm moving all my troops into a better position, getting cover, his occupier tank rolls up and unloads a coordinated firing barrage of the Dark Troopers and the mortar firing team behind, and it was a huge dice pool, and it just completely wiped out my squad. Poor Tusken Raiders. As the remainder of my troops move in and try to get some shots of opportunity on the Dark Troopers, I also position them kind of around the objectives that I had placed on my side of the battlefield, and I'm doing my best to threaten the center, but again, I didn't realize with his infiltrate he was basically going to be one maneuver shy of claiming that center objective with Inferno Squad, and that was definitely going to be enough to obviously tip the objective scale in his favor. Despite that, when the second turn rolls around, I give him hell. I unload a lot of shots on those Dark Troopers. I'm going to kill all but one of those Dark Troopers by the end of turn 2 or turn 3, but he's going to, bit of a spoiler, sorry to skip ahead so much here, he's going to have that one Dark Trooper hop out, get to the objective, play that command card, you have something I want, I think is what it's called, and basically he'll grab the objective and redeploy the guy somewhere completely off the area of occupation here, like in some corner of the battlefield where nothing's going on. And I didn't really know it worked like that. I, again, haven't really played against these guys before, so it was a bit of a learning experience when all that happened, and that's going to just further his objective lead in this battle. Forgot to kind of mention it, but on the first turn, when I finally drew the order for my bus, it moved up as far as possible, and I unloaded the Gamorreans onto his shore troopers. They do a great job. Over the course of the game, they're going to wipe out both the shore trooper squads, and most of them are going to live to tell the tale. I had to heal them every now and then with the medic on board the bus, but I want to say at least 2, maybe 3 of them were still standing by the end of the battle. The real unfortunate news is not only in the prior tournament, but this tournament as well, I didn't know that they got the duelist keyword added to their card. And basically, every single game I've played in so far with them, except the very last battle in this tournament, I will be using aim tokens with them and not be giving them the pierce that they should have, which would have really helped them in terms of their damage output during these games. But hey, you live and you learn, and it's not like they did a bad job in this game. Some combined firepower from the Dark Troopers and the Occupier tank pretty much wipe out my bike squad. They're reduced to literally one wound on the last swoop bike remaining. Despite that, I'm going to get maximum value out of him. He's going to go all the way around the long edge of the table and basically swoop around to where Inferno Squad is. And I want to say a mortar team, maybe like some other unit, like the last remaining shore trooper or something like that. And he's going to cleave down everyone but one wound remaining on Inferno Squad, which is a real shame because they were holding on to two objectives at the end of this game. And we didn't even get to play the last turn, so you never know what could have happened there. I played Boba and Chrysanthemum a little bit poorly in this game. I had Boba snipe one of the mortar teams, and I want to say he killed one of the Dark Troopers as well, or at least did a wound or two to them. Chrysanthemum also did do a wound to them, and I did get a little bit of mileage out of his Guardian keyword during this game, but yeah, I should have put him in a better range position to be making shots of opportunity. Boba Fett also got one wound on Inferno Squad earlier on in the game when he was kind of moving around to get the flank on them, but unfortunately they moved too quickly and kind of got out of my range, and I didn't want to move him up chasing them because there was a fully loaded Dark Trooper squad at that time that could easily have deleted him in one good volley. I mean, looking at this footage of the final turn that we played here, if I maybe had that last turn or I just played my units a little bit more efficiently, I actually really think I could have gotten the victory here. I can see so many things I could have done better, but I'm sure he could have said the same thing, and honestly, then, it just would have been the same level of competition, and he probably would have ended up winning anyways, but yeah, I just made a lot of misplays, I think, in this game. He has that Dark Trooper in the bottom corner of the board, obviously securing one objective, but he has Inferno Squad lingering on one wound, and I have my Gamorrean guards nearby. I have that bike that's also lingering on one wound, so could get killed easily, but could easily delete him. I have Boba Fett sprinting over there. Moff Gideon might be able to intercept him, but I also have Chrysanthemum nearby, so I don't know, I just had a lot of units kind of there to threaten that last Inferno Squad guy, but he easily could have clutched all his saves, gone somewhere where I just would have never had line of sight on him. You never know. And then I wouldn't have been able to get anything on that final turn. So I also didn't quite understand the power of his coordinated fire pools, like using the fire support or whatever the keyword is that lets one unit's attack pool contribute to another. Like, I always thought that your weapon teams had to coordinate fire with the troops that they were bought with, basically. I didn't know they could do it with any unit nearby that has an order as long as they have the order token up. So I learned that rule for the first time, actually, in this game, which was interesting. Again, I didn't know how his command cards kind of worked with Moff Gideon, and there was definitely a bit of a learning curve with that one. The Dark Troopers, just as a whole, had a bit of a learning curve, but I think I honestly dealt with them pretty well. I mean, the last one literally just barely limped away from me, and I also just didn't coordinate my orders well enough in this game. I think if I was able to get some orders on the infantry side a bit more, which is why I kind of mentioned earlier on I misplayed having my heroes on the far side. They should have been with my infantry, so I could have been giving them orders and doing my own large coordinated fire pools instead of just kind of throwing little scrappy ones, which I was the whole game. I even mentioned in my prior tournament report, I know these big dice pools are the name of the game in Legion, at least before the big change up to 2.0. I think there were also just a lot of keywords I either misplayed or didn't understand properly. Like, I already know I've mentioned the Gamorrean guards having the change of the duelist keyword being added to their card. And I also didn't realize that the coordinated tactician that you can take on the bus has a range of 3 for, like, handing out his aim token buffs. Or maybe it's range 2. I always thought it was range 1 or a unit on board the transport. My point is, I looked at the card and I was like, oh dang, this is longer range than I thought. And I want to say the same thing was actually the case for Shriv's Dodge token. So there was just some card things that I needed to refresh myself on a little bit better. And I'm not surprised by that. Again, this is a big reason I actually wanted to play this list again in this tournament, because I don't really get to play Legion every weekend, and you can tell a lot of these guys do, and they definitely got a better level of familiarity when it comes to all their keywords and also what the opponent's going to bring. So, again, I wanted to bring a similar list so I'm not playing catch up to these guys, because I already know I am, even though I played this list in the last game. But I think that's enough reflection on what I did wrong in that battle. Let's move on to the next battle report here. This was actually a rematch game against a friend of the YouTube channel here. His name's Dan. I don't know if you guys read the comments or anything, but he was kind enough to give me a shout out after watching my prior tournament report video. And what's actually kind of funny, I didn't realize this until looking at the footage afterwards, but we almost have a rematch on not the same board as last time, but if you look at the architecture and everything, it's almost a rematch on the same planet. At least that's how I like to imagine it. As I mentioned, we had the same style deployment as the last game. It'll be, spoiler, the same style deployment in the next one. We had intercept the transmission for our objective, and we had supply drop as our environmental. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of Dan's list in front of me here, but I do have a pretty good memory of it. He took 2 range trooper squads, he took 2 stormtrooper squads, he had an occupier tank, and he had Darth Vader on it. I want to say he was using at least 1 shore trooper squad, and I know he had the special weapon, but I don't know if he took a mortar team as well. I want to say he was using all Vader command cards. He might have gotten rid of one of the 3 pips for coordinated fire, but I could be wrong with that. This time around, my deployment was a bit more solid. I did what I wanted to in regards to having the bus and the swoop bikes together on the far side with the Gamorreans obviously inside the bus. I had a rogue weapon team and the Tusken Raiders kind of loosely placed near this tall building that's actually in range of one of the key objectives that we're going to have to hold on to. And I have all my heroes and the remaining infantry and weapon teams kind of all clustered up together to move up the center of the board together as a unit. And they've got a good amount of cover kind of along the way too. So when it comes to the first turn, I send the swoop bikes out quick here. I was hoping to get a good shot in, but I learned right away that these range troopers have armor 1, which I was surprised by. No wounds dealt, suppression, and unfortunately he doesn't take the bait and kind of stay there and take shots at me. He's going to flee away. I was hoping he would stay there and then my bus would be able to move up and I'd unload my troops and get them in a quick melee situation, kind of like the last game. But alas, he decided to move away, and I think he did take a couple lucky shots at my bikes, but it wasn't too severe in terms of damage. Other than that, not too much is going to happen on the first turn here. It's going to be a lot of move orders from our troops and trying to get to supply crates and gather up as much stuff as we can. I would say that Dan got the better end of the supply stick. He got some back to healing tanks, which will help keep Vader alive. I think he got like camouflage and like maybe one other cool item that'll kind of help give dodge tokens or cover for his units. I got a grappling hook or something that I actually was like, alright, this could be kind of useful for my Tusken Raider unit that's near that large building, and I actually used it on turn 2, maybe 3, to scale up to the top of the building. The ref for the game was like, oh wow, that's like the first time I've ever seen that item used in a Legion game, so I thought that was pretty funny. Turn 2 is where things get a little bit more interesting. Obviously, I moved the bus up as much as I could, but as I mentioned, the range troopers did, I think, a shoot attack and then a move. They might have done a move, but again, I think they did a shoot attack, then a move, and I couldn't catch them with the bus because of that, so I had to move around the other side of the building that they're kind of hiding behind and cut through that pass where the building and the shrine are. Luckily, I was able to make it in terms of my movement. And again, I don't think I made this charge on turn 1. I think this was a turn 2 charge. I don't kill him in one round of combat. As you can see, I think there's one range trooper still remaining, and we're going to have to go for a round 2 on the following turn. And it's not good because when the following turn comes, I draw that order so much later than I needed to. And basically, he's going to get a standby token on each of his guys over there, and it's going to trigger right after my guys cleave down the last range trooper. One of his squads is going to run away and get into cover, hide on an objective, and then I believe the shore trooper squad's the one that stays put and unloads a full volley into my Gamorrean guards. I think I only end up losing one Gamorrean from the volley, though. It wasn't the worst in the world. I think it just was not the best roll on the range troopers' end more than anything. Eventually, the bikes are going to get involved in this cluster of troopers and Gamorrean guards as well, and make it even more messy, but that might not be until turn 3. I also might not draw their order token till like the very end of turn 2, and they might just like swoop in at the very, very end. I can't quite remember. But when they do come in, they make their presence known and actually deal a lot of damage. While that's been kind of happening on one side of the battlefield, on the opposite side, my infantry, weapon teams, and heroes are all kind of clustered together behind some cover. It's hard to see in this photo, but the occupier tank's going to be moving up over the first 2 turns and getting as close as possible, with its payload being Darth Vader on the back. I'm not shooting at the occupier. I'm putting as many shots as possible into Darth Vader and trying to basically soften him up as much as possible before he comes in and cleaves down my whole army. Now, this is similar to the last game, but again, it's not my opponent's fault. This is something I just needed to learn, but I never knew that they changed one of Darth Vader's cards. I think it's Darkness Descends, but basically if he has an order token, once you play that card for the rest of the game, whenever he gets that order token, he gets 2 surge tokens right at the start of the turn. And that's a huge deal because I played Darth Vader quite a bit, and to be honest, that was kind of my main strategy here, was like, you want to shoot him before he activates, because like, if he's tokenless, he obviously doesn't have any surges, and his defense really isn't as good as you'd think it would be, and that's like the prime time to take advantage of Darth Vader's meaty health pool and start dealing damage to it. So do I think I made the wrong strategic play because of this? No, and I don't really think, to be honest, it affected my like gameplay drastically. I was probably going to do the same thing regardless if I knew how that card was going to work beforehand. But it's just like a big reason that I think it took me a lot longer than I thought to deal the damage that I was going to need. And that's a big reason that when it comes to turn 3, I think, maybe it was the end of turn 2, but I want to say turn 3, Darth Vader is going to depart from his beloved occupier tank and begin cleaving down my entire rebel squad. I think he played, I can't remember the card name, it's like a Macabole or something like that. It's the one where he takes a wound, but he gets to get another activation. He actually had a hilarious result where he whiffed all of his attacks other than one, so he only killed one rebel. But he took the wound, so he would get another attack later, and that one finished the squad off entirely. So I was down a rebel squad at that time. I think the occupier tank was shooting at my weapon team during the advance forward. I had a couple of lucky moments in regards of the occupier tank's shots on that weapon team. I passed like 3 rebel white dice saves in a single attack, so that was obviously unexpected. The weapon team that I positioned near that rebel squad that Darth Vader cleaved down, he's going to use force push on it every single turn and try to like push it around the corner of the building that I advanced around to get here, so it can't shoot at anything, or it's going to have to move and then be unable to shoot if it wants to get targets. So don't be expecting too much from him during the rest of this game. I wanted to note too, when Darth Vader was about to jump out of the vehicle and attack me, I obviously knew this was going to happen. I had the Whipcord card with Boba Fett, but he also, like I said, played that 1 pip card for Darth Vader, and it came down to a roll of the dice, and he just happened to win it. So I had something of a plan for this situation, but unfortunately it didn't end up pulling through. And when it comes to what my heroes were doing while Darth Vader was cleaving down that squad, I think I had Chrysanthemum charge in and try to deal as much damage as possible, or he just took a shooting attack at him, and Boba Fett got some high ground on the building above and took shots at Vader as well. He was down to just a couple of wounds, I sent Chrysanthemum in to try to mess him up in melee. Got a perfect roll on the attack, but Vader got a perfect roll on his defense. I don't even think he had any surge tokens, so that was a bit of a kicker. But on the following turn, Boba Fett's going to fly in and give him a good bonk with his gaffy stick, and that'll put an end to Darth Vader for now. He got a good slice in on the Wookiee before he actually went down. I think he did like 6 wounds or something like that. Might have been a occupier tank shot as well. But Darth Vader took a lot of shooting attacks and some melee attacks before he went down here. I mean, like 3 turns of concentrated fire from like 2/3 of my army, if not more. He had those surge tokens working for him, and I briefly mentioned it earlier, but I unfortunately didn't get any back to healing tanks out of those supply drops, and my opponent was fortunate enough to draw at least one of those, maybe 2, and I know he was able to use them on Darth Vader just to keep him going even longer. And right before Darth Vader got killed, I don't know what the name of the pip card is, but it's the one that lets him pick up a squad and move them. He used that pip card on my Tusken Raider squads up on the building. He wasn't able to fling them off the building, but he flung them around a little bit, at least on the top floor, and was able to snap the neck of one of them, so I lost a guy from that. I thought that was kind of cool. The rest of my turn 3 shenanigans are my bus desperately trying to get to the other side of the battlefield and hand out tokens wherever applicable. While that's happening, the swoop bikes and the Gamorrean guards are tearing apart those stormtroopers and the shore troopers. I know the Gamorrean guards completely finish off that stormtrooper squad. I am not 100% sure if the swoop bikes finish off the shore troopers, but I actually do think they clear them out, and it gives me control of that objective. The next kind of big plays before our game's going to come to a bit of an abrupt end are my bus is going to do a drastic maneuver to try to cut off the occupier tank. At the very least, I'll try to make him maneuver around or just waste a shot going into me. I'm fine with that. And while that's happening, my heroes and my Tusken Raider squad are getting in range of that objective point that's near the tall building. And Dan's Stormtrooper squad still has control of that central objective. I think the ranged troopers are close by to there as well. But my swoop bikes are on the way, and they're already within a threatening range of the Stormtrooper squad that's on the central objective. I think they already actually did a couple of wounds to them. And while that's happening, the Gamorrean guards are kind of locking down the other objective that he used to have control of. And I'm just trying to get them in as much cover as possible while still contending for that objective. Unfortunately, after this, our game is going to get abruptly ended. I ran the time limit, and we had to conclude it at the end of this turn, because we are in a tournament, and there are other players, and obviously they're dependent on us finishing our game so they can move on to the next match. Now, it was a very busy day, and there was a lot of stuff going on, so I could be a little confused on how the scoring actually worked on this. Maybe Dan will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, since obviously he was my opponent here. But I thought we only played 3 turns. After reviewing this footage, I was like, maybe we did play 4 turns, and I just miscounted my command cards or something like that. Maybe I played standing orders, and I put it back in my hand. I can't quite remember what happened in regards to that, but I initially thought we only played 3 turns, and I was a little grumpy, not at Dan or anything, but at like the state of our game, because I was like, this stinks. Like, you only get scoring points for this objective on even turns, so that basically would have meant, like, if you didn't get enough points on the very, very, like, first scoring turn, which would have been turn 2, you were destined to lose the game, which kind of sucks, obviously. I'm not 100% sure, again, if we did play turn 4, which meant we would have gotten points for that final turn, or if the way it works is, if you don't get to turn 4, if you don't get to turn 6, you basically get scoring points for the final turn you guys play, if you don't make it all the way. It kind of like a way of like compensating for the problem that I kind of mentioned, where there would have only been 1 turn to actually interact and score during the entire game. Either way, my point is I really wasn't expecting to get a victory here. I didn't think I was going to get another turn to score, but apparently I did. So we had two opportunities to score, and because we had that second opportunity, I controlled majority of the objectives near the end of this game here. I also might have had kill points as well, because I think the ref was kind of going into that with me and Dan a little bit afterwards, just in case there was some muddy stuff happening here. But again, I think either way, our game just kind of ended a little too abruptly here. I felt like Dan had some plays he could have possibly made to claim a victory here. He told me like I pretty much had this in the bag here, but like he did have that range trooper squad. He had a bit left in that stormtrooper squad. The occupier tank was in an odd spot, but I don't quite know its movement capabilities. Maybe it could have spun around and gotten a lucky shot on my swoop bikes or my troops behind it. My point is, like, there were some potentials for play here, and I felt a little bit bad because I wanted to get a proper rematch against Dan. I was talking to him about this in our last video, and unfortunately our game was the shortest here out of all of them. Again, ending at least at the end of turn 3, if not turn 4 here. So we missed like a third of our game, most likely, if not half of the game, which kind of sucks. I also was more so the person that was slow playing if there was anyone that was doing it. I had like some side conversations, just catching up with buddies during the tournament. Obviously, I kind of mentioned this in the last battle I was playing. There were certain rules that, like when Dan was playing that Surge card, I don't even know how many times. I probably asked him like 2 or 3 times, wait, so that card gives you like the Surge thing right at the very start? Like, it took me forever for my brain to comprehend that they changed that card. And, you know, there's like a serious learning curve and a slower kind of player when it comes to going up against me in these Legion tournaments. I'm sure all these guys just can do all this stuff and know all these rules way faster than me, and it definitely shows that they have that level of experience when it comes to playing this game. And Dan's no exception. He knows his list much better than I know mine. But that's a big reason we're here to play in these events, so I'm not stuck in a small kind of isolated player pool and not learning like these new kind of concepts for the game. It's really nice to have a bigger player base and get exposed to these types of things. You know, I watch YouTube battle reports and stuff as well on Legion, but a lot of times it's easy to miss things in a battle report. It's much different when you're playing against new faces or old faces you haven't seen in a long time, and you're kind of picking up on rules that they picked up on and you might not have. It kind of seemed like not many people at this group store area play the swoop bikes, so that was kind of something that caught a lot of people off guard when I was using them. A lot of them had to do a double take on the swoop bike rules, actually. That was like the one thing it seemed like most of the players here didn't really seem to know all the rules on. Anyways, we will be moving on to the next battle report here. My final game in the tournament. And we're back to the board that it all started on. Now, there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders for this game. My opponent was the current first place runner, I think, for this event. And I think if I got a win and got enough like objectives or something like that, I could actually have taken first place in this game. So we'll have to see what happens. I also just wanted to make sure in this game I got in as many turns as possible and wasn't going to feel guilty about slowing the game down a ton. So I kind of, as a result, didn't take as many photos for this battle, and I apologize for that. You aren't going to get as thorough a play-by-play in this one. I'm going to kind of just give an overarching narrative as to what happened during this game. Again, I just wanted to make sure in this game I was paying a little bit more attention to what was going on the table. I wasn't going to screw myself over by not remembering my keywords and whatnot, and yeah. So, again, I'm sorry I don't have as many photographs as I should for this final battle. It was pretty epic, and I actually think either the first game had some close elements to it, but this actually might have been the closest game of them all. So because I don't have photos of our deployment before the actual battle begins, I'm going to do my best on the screen here to mark everything for you all to have a visual understanding of the battle. My opponent was playing the Echo-based Defenders. I think he had 3 of those big dish turrets. He had at least 2, possibly 3 of those Mach 2 Rebel veteran detachment turrets. He had 3 veteran squads, he had Han Solo, and he had Chewbacca and a Rebel officer. I remember Han Solo had up close and personal. I'm pretty sure Chewie had protector, and all of his generators had the overdrive generator upgrade that gives him like a suppression keyword for one shooting attack, and then I think you have to exhaust the card. So I went with a similar kind of strategy to what I wanted to do last time. I had the bus and the swoop bikes and the Gamorrean guards on the bus, kind of deployed on that far flank that's close to the enemy. And then I deployed all of my infantry and my characters kind of clustered together and was planning on advancing them up towards like the central objective area. And you can see here, this is my photo actually at the start of turn 2 here. We had quite a concentrated volley of firepower going on my bus, and it actually blew up at the end of turn 1. Luckily, the Gamorrean guards on board didn't really take too much damage from the whole thing, and I was kind of able to deploy them behind that rock cluster there, and that prevented a lot of shooting attacks on them. And when it comes back to my turn, they'll be able to swing out and start deleting units pretty quickly. Once I secured that central area, I kind of spread my troops out, dug in, got some good cover. I had a medical droid there to keep my heroes going. Chrysanthemum was there to guardian any real nasty dice pools on specific units, and yeah, I was dealing some pretty good return fire. I managed, by the end of turn 2, I want to say to destroy 2 of the Rebel veteran units, maybe one of those Mach 2 turrets as well. I get a couple of chip wounds on his heroes, but it's a slow process, and one of them I'm going to be continuing to chip away at throughout the entire game. One thing that was fortunate for me, and my opponent fully admitted it was a bit of a misplay on his part, was earlier on he deployed one of those big dish turrets on the far right side by that crashed Republic gunship, and that thing is not going to be in range of any targets throughout the entire game. But it is near his control point objective, and kind of denying that area from me moving in and doing any flanking maneuvers. So I wouldn't say it's entirely useless, but yeah, it's not even going to get any shots off throughout the entire battle. And yeah, pretty much the story of this game is my lockdown position there of all those units controlling that central objective, and then the Gamorrean guards and the swoop bikes just threatening his flank as much as possible. Eventually he'll shoot down the swoop bikes, but the Gamorrean guards are going to go strong throughout this entire battle. They're going to cleave down one of the Mach 2 turrets, one of the veteran squads, and then they're going to go into one of the dish turrets, cleave it down, and they'll claim the second dish turret before the game ends. But the second dish turret that they actually get into melee combat with puts up a real good fight. The guys manning that turret managed to punch down 1 or 2 of my Gamorreans before they finish it off. He's going to have one of his turrets try to advance up and contest that objective because he's running low on troops to contest it with. He's going to have Chewie and Han sprint forward and try to contest that objective. I get both of them down to, I want to say, 2 wounds remaining on each of them at the end of this game. And trust me, Chewie was trying to guardian as much of the wounds on Han as he can, and Han was using his uncanny luck, all that stuff. And he also got Han right up in my face later in the game. I'll kind of show you on the final turns here. Blasting my units with Gunslinger, getting double dodge tokens with up close and personal, and yeah, it was some pretty nasty stuff, and he had some good defenses on his characters, and I just wasn't able to break him before the game ended, unfortunately. But despite that, I was able to keep control of that central objective throughout the entire game. And on the very last turn, he tried to get as many units as possible in there and delete whatever kind of scrappy thing I had left contending the objective. You can see I have like a one-man unit and like a 2-man unit still alive there. I got Boba Fett. I think Chrysanthemum went down on like the final turns, but yeah, I had like 2 or 3 scoring units there just on their last legs, and it was just enough to give me control of that objective. He had a couple of really close shots too, like you can see that last veteran squad going around the far side trying to make a flanking shot on one of my Rebel veteran teams positioned in the middle there, and I only had 1 guy left after that volley. Easily could have lost the game right then and there, so that's what I mean by this game was insanely close. Some other stuff to make note of was I had Boba Fett fly out and do his AoE like melee attack card at like the most opportune time. I think I had three different targets I could hit with it. I also had tenacity on him, so he would get an extra die on the melee attack that he was doing, and it was basically the best setup possible. I had him do a move to get into contact there, so he had two aim tokens for the attack pool as well. And yeah, somehow he passed every single white die save. I talked about it afterwards with him, and I think he had to make 7 white die saves on that. 3 or 4 of them were on Han, 2 were on like his weapon team, and then 1 was on like another, maybe like a rebel officer or something that sprinted up. Maybe it was Chewie, not quite sure. But that was some insane luck on his part there. I don't know whether to be upset with the card or to just be upset with the way the dice played out there. I easily could have got like 2 of his units deleted before the end turn there, but he just got insanely lucky with those dice rolls. But despite his uncanny luck, we managed to get the victory here. It's because I had controlled that central objective for majority of the game, and then on that final turn, he wasn't really able to unlodge enough units to get majority control of that objective. So I even got the scoring point there. And then on the far left side, I had my strike team that's led by Fennec Shand, just controlling my safe objective throughout the whole game. Kind of like how he had his dish turret controlling his throughout the whole game. Now, I was trying to play a bit quicker, and I want to say we played all 6 turns out in this battle, but I could be wrong, and there might have been 1 turn left, because I know he was discussing with a couple of the guys afterwards what he maybe could have done differently, or like what he could have done if he had 1 more turn to kind of claim the victory there. And there was definitely some debate amongst the players whether he could have gotten on that final turn or not. I still had my characters alive, and I think Boba Fett only had like 1 wound on him at that time, and his were kind of on their last legs. And I had the strike team and just a couple of other units left barely hanging in there. So I don't know, it could have gone either way, I think, if we had 1 more turn. But it was a really competitive game. I got the victory, but unfortunately, I didn't get enough victory points during the game to actually claim first place in this tournament. I came in with 2nd place this time around. Hey, it's an improvement that over last time. But, yeah, I think a big lesson that I learned here is if I played a little bit quicker in my prior matches and got a few more turns in, I could have had more opportunity to get more victory points and maybe contest for this first place position here, because we ended up beating the army that actually took first place in the final match here. So I think that was definitely in the stars for this force, but unfortunately we came up short on overall victory points. But you know what? I'm pretty dang happy with my army's performance in these games, and myself as a player overall, to be honest with you. I think I've been doing pretty well for myself. I'm picking up things pretty quickly and getting a good understanding of each of the units here, and it's kind of a shame that all that's kind of gonna get thrown away here, because I gotta learn a whole new rule system when it comes to Legion 2.0, or all the new changes, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's also a reason that I'm probably not going to go as in-depth into like the statistics, the victory point totals, and all that stuff. I know people are a little bit more excited for all the new Legion 2.0 content, and I will be getting around to that rather shortly, and I want to give all my thoughts and opinions on it too. But I do have some concluding thoughts I want to give on the tournament here, and also express my gratitude for yet again the awesome prizes that we got for this event. I got a bunch of new tokens, the objective tokens that you need to keep track of for the new Legion 2.0 system, as well as the half-range movement tool that you need to play now. Also got a bunch of store credit, not quite sure what I'm going to use that on yet. Maybe when they release some physical product for 2.0, I'll use it on that. And I also had a pick at a bunch of different operatives and heroes for Legion, and I chose Asajj Ventress. I know I've only shown off my rebels so far on the channel here, but I actually own like all the factions for Legion and have a pretty big collection, so one day I'll show off everything for the channel here and get some battle reports in that aren't just this rebel force. And I already gave some post game thoughts after each of the battle reports here, but there are definitely some things I missed out on that I want to mention briefly, and a couple of units that I just didn't have a chance to talk about during the battle reports. Like, I know I only mentioned maybe briefly once or twice my strike team that's led by Fennec Shand. It was mostly kind of being used as just that, an objective camper, but during the second game especially, she actually had a lot of good shots of opportunity and was plucking off a stormtrooper squad, I think on the central chapel area, that was holding down that objective. Maybe she was shooting at the range troopers, but I'm pretty sure it was the stormtroopers. The first game, unfortunately, she really didn't get to do too much. Got like one, maybe two wounds in on the Dark Troopers. Maybe one of them was a killing blow, which was cool, but after that, I think she got deleted. And eventually, in that second game as well, I'm pretty sure the Range Troopers did a long shot volley into her and deleted her again. Third game, again, was kind of just an objective camper. Had her taking some shots of opportunity on some of the turret teams that the Echo-based defenders had, but yeah, didn't really do the most. And to be honest, kind of has been the, I would say, least performing efficiently unit in my list so far in this tournament and the last one. I think I just need to learn to play her more efficiently on sharper angles and getting the wound in where I need it most. Or I've been kind of thinking about proxying her out for Cassian Andor. I know he can use a sniper rifle, and he's like an actual hero character. And depending on how many points he is at the 1,000 point range that 2.0 has, I might be able to kind of upgrade her into that. Or, I don't know, I just need to figure out how to use the strike team more efficiently during my games. Chrysanthemum did a good job being a protector and guardian this game. I was sure to not forget that keyword this time around. Maybe I let it slip once during the first game, but I was quickly reminded of it, and I didn't let it slip on my second and third game, luckily. That was a mistake I made quite a bit in the prior tournament. So he was doing a good job at that, dealing a couple of range wounds, getting a melee attack every now and then. He had a great chance to take down Darth Vader. Darth Vader just had insane luck when it came to his armor saves, and nothing I can do about that. Boba Fett, I could have been a little bit more aggressive with this game, I think, especially since I gave him up close and personal. I just had him too far back at certain points and needed him a little bit more forward. I did get good use of his flamethrower, even though I didn't mention it. In the third game that we played, one of the Rebel veteran squads was like near full health and sprinting towards that central objective, and he popped that flamethrower and pretty much roasted them all down. So, good use there. And then in the second game, I didn't really have a good chance to use it on one of the infantry squads, but when he jumped into melee with Darth Vader, I popped it just to add an extra red dice into the attack pool. And I don't know if that was the thing that gave me the kill or not, but it definitely helped overall with the attack pool. I would say his main use in these games was just kind of like in the third match there, being this lockdown point that people would try to focus on, and I would use the combination of Guardian and medical droids to just kind of keep them going throughout the game, and, you know, just keep putting your shots into them, and it'll distract the enemy from the other kind of elements of my army that can then deal damage, and that seemed to be his best element during a lot of these games. He dealt okay damage, especially during the third game. He definitely got his hands pretty dirty, especially in melee. But yeah, I think I could have played him a little bit better. At times, I was playing the bus pretty dang well, just like having it in the proper position to drop off the Gamorreans where they were kind of needed to cause chaos and disrupt the enemy's back line. But then at other times, I really needed to hustle it over to where my infantry line was located, kind of on the other side of the battlefield, and get those token support things going out. And then there were just other times I just couldn't play it properly as like a line of sight blocker, and I think I could have just gotten a little bit more mileage out of it during these games. The swoop bites did amazing. I think they did amazing in the last tournament too, though. I don't think I misplayed them as much this time around. They did pretty damn well. The first game, like I said, I should have had them over by the bus and kind of inflicting chaos like the Gamorreans were on the back rank. But they redeemed themselves when I had them swoop all the way around and nearly kill Infernal Squad. My veterans in Mach 2 turrets, I definitely played poorly, I think, in the first game especially. Second game, maybe a little bit less so. Third game, I think I did pretty good with them, though. But what I mean by that is by the third game, I learned like I needed to get my order tokens out on these specific units and be doing those big coordinated fire pools that everyone's doing on me. And yeah, I just didn't have that chain of order sequences available during those first couple of games I played in during the proper times. Second game, again, I was a little bit better with it, but I could tell that was one of the big errors I was making during that first battle. I needed to have those big dice pools going into those Dark Troopers much earlier on. Now, the Gamorrean guards, other than the fact I got a big plot twist dropped on me that they got the duelist keyword added to them, I actually think I played them pretty well, and they might have been my all-star unit during pretty much every single one of these games. Let's see what their kill count total was during this tournament. I could be off with some of those numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's what their kill count total was, and that's pretty insane. And I also want to mention that they survived every single one of these games, too, with at least half of their unit alive, if not more. So that's why I mentioned much earlier in the video that I'm considering building up another squad of these guys, because I think that they are pretty amazing. Also want to say that everyone I played against in this event was an absolute joy. I seriously did not have a single moment where I was like, oh, like, really, dude? Like, or this and that. Like, no. Every single person was a blast to play against. I would be excited to play 100 more Legion games against any of these people. Maybe not all in one day or anything, spaced out over a good period of time and whatnot. But yeah, all absolute joys. They would all be great rivals to have in games of Legion. Especially Dan. It was great that I got the rematch game in against him. I was a little nervous because we weren't able to meet up earlier in the week, that I wasn't actually going to get that rematch game in. But then we got paired up during the tournament, and I was like, oh, perfect. And my opponent, actually, in this final game here, the guy that took first place, he was someone I used to play X-Wing 1.0 against, like, I don't know, what would it be, like 6-7 years ago or something like that. We used to play in store tournaments, just random events, and then just casual play all the time against each other. And he started to get into Legion when it first came out, and I mentioned this in my other video. I played in like some store events and stuff right when Legion came out, but I think he took a little bit longer to kind of like build up all of his troops and everything, so we might have gone one game in back in the day, but yeah, this was like a rematch that was like years in the making here, so that was really fun to get that game in against him. And my opponent in the first match was actually someone I had never played against, and I think he missed out on the tournament I played in last time. So, pleasure to meet him, had a really cool, fully painted army, and he was telling me that his son actually painted up all the troops, so it was a bit of a father-son combination battle force there, and I definitely can admire that. Also, he was kind of a bit more of like a thematic game player, and not to say he wasn't like competitive or like a good player or anything, but yeah, he kind of mentioned like, I'm more about like having fun and like the theme of the game and everything like that kind of guy, and I don't know, I kind of could relate to his style of play and his overall kind of tabletop gameplay etiquette quite a bit, so he was a real pleasure to play against as well. And I gave him a shout out last time, but Dan's army is always really, really beautifully painted. Everything is like painted towards like the movie quality level, and he's going for like the exact kind of on-screen paint schemes and everything. Things are like really clean, and yeah, I always really admire that. He has like some custom little like loading what are they called, kyber crystal crates with like a little tarp on top of it on the back of his grav tank. I thought that was really cool. And he also got those range troopers already fully painted and looking really nice. I was impressed with that because I think they only came out like a couple months ago. Anyways, folks, I know I've chatted quite a bit about this tournament, but it's the last 800-point tournament I might ever play in here. I don't know if people are going to be going back to this format, or if everyone's going to be kind of confidently moving forward to 2.0 or whatever the future holds for Legion. So, kind of a bittersweet moment. I am excited to try out some of these new systems that the game is offering, and obviously I like getting new content for the game as well, and plenty of that's on the horizon too. So we'll have to see what the future holds for Legion. Either way, again, this event was fantastic to play in. I had a great time. It'll definitely be a memory that's there forever. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video and my little discussion on the tabletop game and the event I played in. Have a great day, and I'll see you all later. Bye bye.